Hello, this is the Hindu editorial of November 17, 2020. The topics for discussion, the first one is technology, economy, and governance. November 17, 2020 had an important topic which we have covered in a separate video, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So these are the other editorials. Needed a policy framework in step with technology. This topic is mostly important for the GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. In GS paper 2, we will be discussing on governance, and in GS paper 3, questions mostly on science and technology. So, the importance of science and technology in economy as well as governance is discussed in this topic. Needed a policy framework in step with technology. With the rapid pace of technology blurring boundaries, a holistic view of scheme is a must. So, as we know, currently technology is, or you can say, digital era. During the time of digital era governance, data is currency. So, rapid technology is blurring the boundaries. You cannot have compartmentalization of uh, governance, or you can't have compartmentalization of decision making. A holistic view of scheme is a must. As technology has evolved in the latter part of the 20th century and early part of the 21st century, traditional boundaries between goods and services have blurred. There is not much difference between goods and services. Information is the new currency, data is the new currency in powering economics. The expansion of computing power has driven the pace of information gathering and analysis. The new currency drives process and decision making. So, when you are selling the goods, it's not just the goods, it's also the services. So, the difference between the goods and services is blurring. Data is the new currency, information technology is the new currency. Paradigm shift as the amount of value add from intangible technology services as opposed to physical objects. Value addition is given a lot of weight rather than more is looked up in the form of technology as opposed to just physical objects. Earlier it was just the objects which was more important, but now you must have noticed the after sale service, how fast you get it, the convenience, all these things are taken into consideration. Even in traditional goods is being transformed by information. Information availability drives efficiency and creates value for customers by providing greater control over the product and its surrounding environment. So, what the customers need is information, data is important, technology is important, and blurring of the boundaries between goods and services. Just remember these points when you are answering in the essays, when you are answering in GS paper 2 and 3, these things needs to be taken into consideration. Working in silos. Governments have looked at economic development and industry as catalysts to progress. To address the needs of various stakeholders, governments have tended to build specialized departments and design policies that govern those areas. However, over time, as these departments grew, they have tended to operate in silos. So, economic development is an important, you can say, effect, or economic development is an important result of the government policies. Plus, it is also a factor for developing, or you can say, removing people out of poverty. So, economic development is a must, and governments have focused a lot on economic development, and that is why many departments have grown so that economic development can happen. But now these departments are working in silos, in compartments, which is not possible. In this time of technology, a wholesome view, a comprehensive view needs to be seen. The recent development in technologies have blurred standard boundaries that dictate policy framework in most governments. So here we are looking at the governance point of view. In the questions which are pertaining to digital era governance or e-governance, these points needs to be highlighted. If you look at the automobile industry, so one example is given. Policies are governed by heavy industries and surface transport ministry respectively. So two ministries are the heavy industry and surface transport in case of automobile. However, increasing electronification and digitization of the automobiles are not covered by industrial policies that govern electronics and information technology ministry. So when you are making an automobile, earlier it was heavy industries and surface transport, but now because of the electronification, digitization, and so many services which are there, value additions which are there, electronics and information technology ministry also needs to be taken over. It needs to be involved in this. Another example involves drones that could serve different sectors, including agriculture, and would require a lot of interdepartmental clearance outside of the Department of Agriculture. There is a increasing need of interdepartment cooperation, synergy, not only in policy framework but also in deployment. So we saw how technology is important. We saw what is the current status of technology, how comprehensive view needs to be seen, and that is why interdepartment technology cooperation and synergy is needed. Targeting an aggregate view, a holistic view. There is a need to have an holistic view of the policies. The policies can't be seen in compartments. For economic development, as technology is being becoming a significant enabler in most industries. A major change in policy framework regarding economic development that enables various ministries to work together is essential. So, technology is important, a holistic view of looking at things are important, and for this, data and all these things needs to be taken into consideration. A nourishing ecosystem for industry, including the hard infrastructure and softer areas such as education, skilling, technical institutions, laboratories, testing centers, etc., has to be cultivated. So you, when you are focusing on manufacturing sector, you can't just look at the manufacturing sector in case of goods. You will also have to see it with the services, as we had just discussed. The boundaries between goods and services is reducing. So there is hard infrastructure needed, but also areas such as education, skills, technical education, laboratories, testing centers has to be cultivated. The creation of clusters of companies in adjacent but complementary areas could constitute such an ecosystem. So, clustered approach is needed, and cross disciplinary learning and spur innovation economic development. So, the things that are needed is when you're talking about increasing the industrial sector. Recently, we had seen in the earlier editorials how we can push investment, how we can increase our economy. One way we can do is by also focusing on these areas, that is the technology area, where cross disciplinary learning, innovation, and economic development can be achieved. Moreover, this type of ecosphere could also attract investment and capital formation. The policy by and large promotes and gives incentives for manufacturing, whereas the share of intangibles, even in traditional manufacturing companies, whether it be software, research and development, or even servicing of products, are not adequately covered in industrial policies. We had seen recently the labor codes have come, our investment policies are changing. We were also talking about RCEP and coming of various countries, the various countries coming together for increasing the economy. All these points needs to be understood in the current context. With this, that is the increase of the service sector, increase of technology, so that the industries are increased. So this area we are not taking care of when we talk about the industrial policy. It is important to include these to encourage innovation and technological development. So that was the part of economy, governance, and technology. Now we are going to see some important facts of how is the employment situation of women in India. Very important facts which will help you. You all can note it down. Secondly, it will also we'll also be able to understand during COVID-19 what is the situation of the employment of women? Has it increased, decreased, or what has happened? Women, as we know, constitute around 48 to 49% of our population, and their development and their labor participation is very important, crucial for the economic development of the whole country. Fallen through the cracks. India's high economic growth has been of little value for its under acknowledged female workers. So our economic growth has increased, but not is not in pace with the labor participation. It means the labor participation has not been able to catch up with the economic growth. Labor participation labor participation means for the women. The year 2020 marks the anniversary of two major events. This is a very important thing that we have to remember. Two major events. First one, 50 years of Committee on the Status of Women in India, which submitted the report towards equality to the United Nations. So the Committee on the Status of Women in India, again remember, and 50 years of this. And it had given a report to United Nations, which focused on women-sensitive policy making in India, providing a fresh perspective on gender equality. Second is 25 years of Beijing Platform of for Action. Beijing Platform for Action, 25 years. A benchmark for analyzing the condition of women and state-led empowerment. So 2 points, remember: Committee on Status of Women in India and Beijing Platform for Action. Statistics on the labor participation by women. So let's see some statistics. Between 2004 and 18, one of the lowest labor participation rates for women, which have been consistently declining since 1950. So remember, the labor participation has actually declined. The recently released periodic labor force survey 2018-19 indicates a dramatic fall in the absolute employment for women. So it has declined, absolute numbers have declined more, who faced a decline in labor participation rate from 2011 to 19 in rural areas from 35 to just 26%, and in the urban areas to around 20%. So currently the labor participation of the women on the whole is 23%. 26% in the rural areas, 20% in the urban areas, which is very less. In the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap report, we are 149 among 153 countries. The gender wage gap is the highest in Asia, with women 34% below men. So just imagine, the wages are so low. Article 39 talks about equal pay for equal work, both men and women, but it is very low, with women 34% below men, according to the Oxfam report. So just remember these statistics. It has reduced. 23% is the labor participation, which is very less. We are 149 out of the 153 countries, and 34% wages below men. Women also disproportionately populate India's informal economy. So they are mostly there in the informal economy, and are concentrated in low paid, highly precarious jobs. Estimates show that agriculture employs 60% of women, who form the bulk of the landless laborers in almost the completely informal sector. So it is 60% of women in agriculture and mostly landless laborers. So some statistics that you have to remember. So we saw it is reducing. We saw the Oxfam report in India, 34% wages. Then we saw the number is 23% on an average, 26% in rural areas, 20% in the urban areas, 60% employed by agriculture and informal jobs. So all these things you have to remember. In state sector wise, according to India spent only about 13% of women tillers owned their land in 2019. So this is an important number. So they don't own the land, mostly landless laborers. Manufacturing employs only around 14% of female labor force. Manufacturing is employing only 14% of female labor force. The service sector disproportionately involved in care work. According to National Sample Survey 2005, over 60% of 4.7 million domestic workers are women. So domestic workers mostly women, 30% in the those people who work in agriculture, 13% only own the land, and 14% in the labor force manufacturing. So just remember these numbers, very important. And the two anniversaries that you have to remember is the report and uh, also about the Beijing Action Plan. So what has happened in the COVID-19? The Center for Monitoring of Indian Economy showed 39% women lost their jobs in April and May compared to 29% men. So COVID-19 has affected women much more. Women spend 3 times or even 6 times more time than men in household work. Women are more into the household work. According to WHO, 70% of women's healthcare and social workers are women. World 70% of the world's healthcare and social workers are women. We also saw they are more in the informal sector, more in the agriculture sector, and domestic care sector. In India, women are indispensable as frontline ASHA workers, but they are underpaid and overworked. India recently passed the three labor codes. The codes acknowledge neither the gender wage gap nor non payment of wages and bonuses, and ignore informal workers in terms of social security, insurance, provident fund, maternity benefits, or gratuity. So, wherever the women are, those things have not been covered in the three labor codes, neither in the gender wage gap, which is 34% lower, in the informal sector, nor in the wages and bonuses. Though allowing women to work on night shift, there is little focus on accountability and responsibility, even protection from sexual harassment at workplace. So remember, working in the night shift, government has allowed, but where is the accountability? Sexual harassment at workplace, plus the maternity benefits that the women talk about. Nothing has changed much with an insensitively formulated adoption leave policy that grants leave to women who adopt infants under the age of 3 months. So they are only in the case of adoption. So maternity benefits, there are some benefits given, but for if a woman is adopting, she will get maternity benefit relief only if she has adopted a child less than 3 months, mostly, which does not happen. So we have seen on editorial on technology, and then on the statistics, important statistics on the labor participation of women. Very important article is on the Pulwama and the Balakot airstrike, which happened later. So if you remember, last in 2019 we had the Pulwama attacks in the month of February, March, and India retaliated by the Balakot airstrikes. And we have seen how defiant we have our air commander, who was Abhinandan. He's a brave soldier. He's a brave Air Force officer who stood firm in Pakistan and made us proud. And later he was released. So we are going to discuss some of these things in detail, plus how we should not be politicizing the army or the military. The military should see to it that they are away from politics. The right lessons from Pulwama and Balakot in Pakistan, and why all this is happening. Why are we talking about all this today? In Pakistan, former Speaker and opposition MP Sardar Ayaz Siddique alleged in Pakistan National Assembly last month that PTI government, fearing an imminent missile strike from India, had capitulated and released the captured Indian pilot wing commander Abhinandan Vardhaman. So, one of the opposition MP and former speaker had said he was targeting Imran Khan, that he got scared, Pakistan got scared of the Indian attack, and they left wing commander Abhinandan Vardhaman. The allegation was denied by Pakistan government and the all-powerful military, and even Mr. Sadiq partially backtracked. This was, uh, you can say, a matter of concern and you can say a shame for the military. In Pakistan, military controls a lot of governance, a lot of things over there. It is very powerful. The revival of the focus of on Pulwama and Balakot provides us with an opportunity for an honest appraisal of the incident. He discussed the threat of Indian missiles attack that night. A day earlier, the IAF had targeted a seminary at Balakot in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan, avenging the suicide car bomb in Pulwama 12 days earlier. So 12 days earlier, Pulwama attack had happened. After 12 days, we retaliated with the Balakot. So he discussed all this. And plus he said there was a imminent danger of missile attack by India. That is why Abhinandan Vardhaman, wing commander, a brave soldier, Air Force man, was released. The Pakistan Air Force attempted its riposte in Jammu and Kashmir, and in ensuing aerial combat, wing commander Abhinand was captured. So, this is the whole scenario, which is why we are discussing it. A video of the suicide bomber was released by the Jaish-e-Mohammed. There have been constant whispers about certain aspects of the Pulwama terror attack. Those questions have not been answered satisfactorily, even after 13,800 page NIA charge sheet which was filed. The responsibility of intelligence failure. What can we learn from Pulwama and Balakot? That's important so that in future these things don't happen. The responsibility of the intelligence failure, violation of standard operating procedures by the security forces, and possible involvement of disgraced Jammu and Kashmir officer Davinder Singh remain unexamined. So, three things we need to focus on. Davinder Singh was posted in Pulwama from May 2017 to August 2018 and was caught transporting two absconding militants to Delhi in his private car. He had earlier had been named by Afzal Guru, who was hanged in 2013, as a key go between in 2001 terrorist attack on the parliament. So there's a lot of evidences against Davinder Singh, allegedly that he had created this Pulwama terror attack. He had helped. So now something which are so we saw what is the context. We saw why we are speaking about it today, about Pulwama and Balakot. You understand? Now about our military, our forces, the conduct of the forces, how it has to be, and what changes or what introspection it needs to make. The conduct of the forces. The questions about Balakot airstrike have more or less been answered by foreign governments. Mostly you can see this in foreign governments and international media. Indian Air Force is seen to have lost the battle of narrative to the Pakistani counterparts. We do not know exactly what happened. The Indian government claims that we attacked, and it might be true, but the Pakistani counterpart has been able to win the narrative battle. The performance of IAF in aerial combat the next day, where it claims to have shot down a Pakistani Air Force F-16 fighter jet. So we had the MiG-29 fighting with the Pakistani Air Force F-16 fighter jet, has been received with skepticism. Wing Commander Abhinandan's defiant behavior in Pakistani custody deserved praise. He did well. He stood there with his cup of tea and did not answer anything which the Pakistanis were asking, rightly by an honest or a brave soldier or a Air Force man should do. That day, IAF also shot down its helicopter in friendly fire close to Srinagar. So on the same day, Indian Air Force shot its own helicopter in close to Srinagar. But what made it worse was the IAF's efforts to prevent any media reportage of the incident before the Lok Sabha election were over. That was the matter of concern, that this was not being allowed to be reported. In a healthy democracy, apolitical armed forces are supposed to follow the elected government's lawful orders but do not work to further the aims of the ruling party. That would be more in tune with China, where the armed forces are loyal to the Communist Party and not the Chinese state. Yes, in a democracy, in a parliamentary system of democracy especially, the armed forces are answerable to the executive, to the government, but this does not mean they are answerable to a particular party, which is in China. 2 decades ago, the then Army Chief General VP Malik had lodged a complaint with the Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee during Kargil War about the use of images of the services on a political party's banner. While the crumbling of institutions like parliament, the judiciary, and the media in recent years has earned a lot of attention, scholars have been shy of making inquiries about the conduct of armed forces, an institution even more critical to the health of Indian democracy. So, we should also be able to criticize the armed forces, see to it that they are not politicizing them, which will also help in the healthy Indian democracy. So we have the Chief of Defence Staff here. He is Bipin Rawat. So let's see, sir, the claims, facts, and the audience. The Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, claimed on November 6 that the Balakot strike had a sense of strong message that Pakistan no longer enjoys impunity of pushing terrorists into India under the nuclear bogey, and a new Indian template to deal with terror has injected uncertainty. So when Balakot strike happened, before that surgical strike happened, what did the Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat say? Bipin Rawat said that the Balakot strike proved that the Pakistanis cannot always challenge India and threaten India that we are going to put nuclear attack on India and India will keep quiet. Mostly what used to happen is India never retaliated, thinking that the Pakistanis will use the nuclear bombs that they have, the tactical nuclear weapons that they have, and they have nothing to lose. India will lose a lot. This was what the Pakistanis thought, but by surgical strike and the Balakot, General Bipin Rawat says we have been able to uh, tell the Pakistanis that we will punish them. But is it playing any role? Is it working on the Pakistanis? Pakistanis are still pushing the militants into Kashmir Valley, and hundreds of militants ready to be pushed across the line of control at launch pads. However, the Balakot airstrike was definitely a punitive move, a tactical act which demonstrated India's willingness to cross the threshold of using air power against Pakistan, that too on its mainland. It was a punitive move. The target audience, evidently, in hindsight, was largely domestic. So the move for this, rather than Pakistan, but because they are still doing it, was actually domestic audience, and you can understand could be politics another reason. So this is what we need to introspect, this is what we need to observe and see to it that it is not happening in the future. Indian threat and Pakistani counter threat of firing missiles at each other, an escalatory that could have taken the conflict into uncharted territory. So it was a very grave crisis when all this happened. Urgent interventions by United States, United Kingdom and others that night who pressed on both the government to step back. That the two countries could de-escalate so quickly is a positive sign, but the fact that any miscreant with a few kilos of explosive and an old car can bring two nuclear weapon states to the brink of war should leave us worried. So, important three articles. The first article was on technology, focused on GS paper 2, GS paper 3, and governance. Second article was on women in labor participation in GS paper 1, women issues, and also in economy, labor reforms, and you can also put it in ethics. And the third one was national security and governance. So please see to it that you make notes on these articles, and remember, the art and science of asking question is the source of all knowledge. Thank you.